Hello there, squirrels. I'm for reading, and I'm cold. Helps to keep my wigwam, my head warm. Okay, we're in chapter 6 on part 3. Tuppence was nothing if not thorough. Although she had no wish to go to London, she judged it wise to do exactly as she had said said she was going to do. If she merely made an excursion somewhere for the day, somebody might see her, and the fact would get round to Sans Souci. No, Mrs. Blenkinsop had said she was going to London, and to London she must go. She purchased a third return and was just leaving the booking office window when she ran into Sheila Perrine. "Hello," said Sheila. "Where are you off to?" "I just came to see about a parcel which seems to have gone astray." Tuppence explained her plans. "Oh, yes, of course," said Sheila carelessly. "I do remember you saying something about it. But I hadn't realized it was today you were going. I'll come and see you into the train." Sheila was more animated than usual. She looked neither bad-tempered nor sulky. She chatted quite amiably about small details of daily life at Sans Souci. She remained talking to Tuppence until the train left the station. After waving from the window and watching the girl's figure recede, Tuppence sat down in her corner seat again and gave herself up to serious meditation. Was it, she wondered, an accident that Sheila had happened to be at the station just at that time? Or was it a proof of enemy thoroughness? Did Mrs. Perrine want to make quite sure that the garrulous Mrs. Blenkinsop really had gone to London? It looked very much like it. Part 4. It was not until the next day that Tuppence was able to have a conference with Tommy. They had agreed never to attempt to communicate with each other under the roof of Sans Souci. Mrs. Blenkinsop met Mr. Meadows as the latter, his hay fever somewhat abated, was taking a gentle stroll on the front. They sat down on one of the promenade seats. "Well," said Tuppence. Slowly, Tommy nodded his head. He looked rather unhappy. "Yes," he said, "I got something, but Lord, what a day. Perpetually with an eye to the crack of the door. I've got quite a stiff neck." "Never mind your neck," said Tuppence unfeelingly. "Tell me." "Well, the maids went in to do the bed and the room, of course, and Mrs. Perrine went in, but that was when the maids were there, and she was just blowing them up about something, and the kid ran in once and came out with a woolly dog." Yes, anything else?" "One person," said Tommy slowly. "Who?" "Carl Van Deenham." Oh, Tuppence felt a swift pang. So after all... "When?" she asked. "Lunchtime. He came out from the dining room early, came up to his room, then sneaked across the passage and into yours. He was there about a quarter of an hour." He paused. "That settles it, then?" "No, that settles it, I think." Tuppence nodded. "Yes, it settled it all right. Carl Van Deenham could have had no reason for going into Mrs. Blenkinsop's bedroom and remaining there for a quarter of an hour, save one. His complicity was proved. He must be, Tuppence thought, a marvelous actor. His words to her that morning had rung so very true, or perhaps they had been true in a way. To know when to use the truth was the essence of a successful deception. Carl Van Deenham was a patriot, all right. He was an enemy agent working for his country. One could respect him for that, yes, but destroy him too. "I'm sorry," she said slowly. "So am I," said Tommy. "He's a good chap." Tuppence said, "You and I might be doing the same thing in Germany." Tommy nodded. Tuppence went on. "Well, we know more or less where we are. Carl Von Denham working in with Sheila and her mother, probably Mrs. Perina, is the big noise. Then there is that foreign woman who was talking to Carl yesterday. She's in it somehow. What do we do now? We must go through Mrs. Perina's room sometime. There might be something there that would give us a hint. And we must tell her, tail, T-A-I-L. Tell her, see where she goes and whom she meets. Tommy, let's get Albert down here. Tommy considered the point. Many years ago, Albert, a page boy in a hotel, had joined forces with the young Beersfords and shared their adventures. Afterward, he had entered their service and been the sole domestic prop of the establishment. Some 6 years ago, he had married and was now the proud proprietor of the Duck and Dog pub in South London. Tuppence continued rapidly. Albert would be thrilled. We'll get him down here. He can stay at the pub near the station, and he can shadow the Perinas for us or anyone else. What about Mrs. Albert? She was going to her mother in Wales with the children last Monday because of air raids. It all fits in perfectly. Yes, that's a good idea, Tuppence. Either of us following the woman would be rather conspicuous. Albert would be perfect. Now, another thing I think we ought to watch out for. I think we ought to watch out for that so-called Polish woman who was talking to Carl and hanging about here. It seems to me she probably represents the other end of the business, and that's what we're anxious to find. Like a goon. Oh, yes, I do agree. She comes here for orders or to take messages. Next time we see her, one of us must follow her and find out more about her. What about looking through Mrs. Perina's room and Carl's too, I suppose? I don't suppose you'll find anything in his. After all, as a German, the police are liable to search it, so he'd be careful not to have anything suspicious. The Perina is going to be difficult. When she's out of the house, Sheila's often there, and then there's Betty and Mrs. Sprott running about all over the landings. And Mrs. O'Rourke spends a lot of time in her bedroom. She piles lunchtime is the best. Master Carl's time? Exactly. I could have a headache and go to my room. No, someone might come up and want to minister to me. I know. I'll just come in quietly before lunch and go up to my room without telling anyone. Then after lunch, I can say I had a headache. I think it had better be me. If I'm called, I could always say I was looking for aspirin or something. One of the gentlemen boarders in Mrs. Perina's room would cause far more speculation. Tommy grinned of a scandalous character. Then the smile died. He looked grave and anxious. As soon as we can, old thing. The news is bad today. We must get on to something soon. In part 5. Tommy continued his walk and presently entered the post office, where he put through a call to Mr. Grant and reported the recent operation was successful and our friend C is definitely involved. Then he wrote a letter and posted it. It was addressed to Mr. Albert Bat, the Duck and Dog, Glamorgan Street, Kennington. Then he bought himself a weekly paper which professed to inform the English world of what was really going to happen, and strolled innocently back in the direction of Sanssouci. Presently he was hailed by the hearty voice of Commander Haydock, leaning from his two-seater car and shouting, "Hello, Meadows, want a lift?" Tommy accepted a lift gratefully and got in. "So you read that rag, do you?" demanded Haydock, glancing at the scarlet cover of the Inside Weekly News. Mr. Meadows displayed the slight confusion of all readers of the periodical in question when challenged. Awful rag, he agreed, but sometimes, they really do seem to know what's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes they're wrong. Oh, quite so. Truth of it is, said Commander Haydock, steering rather erratically round a one-way island and narrowly missing collision with a large van. When the beggars are right, one remembers it, and when they're wrong, you forget it. Do you think there's any truth in this rumor about Stalin having approached us? Wishful thinking, my boy, wishful thinking, said Commander Haydock. The Ruskies are as crooked as hell and always have been. Don't trust them, that's what I say. Hear you've been under the weather? Just a touch of hay fever. I get it about this time of year. Yes, of course. Never suffered from it myself, but I had a pal who did. Used to lay him out regularly every June. Feeling fit enough for a game of golf? Tommy said he'd like it very much. Right, what about tomorrow? Tell you what, I got to do a meeting about this parashot business, raising a corps of local volunteers. Jolly good idea if you ask me. Time we were all made to pull our weight. So shall we have a round about 6? Thanks very much, I'd like to. Good, then it's settled. The commander drew up abruptly at the gate of Sans Souci. How's the fair Sheila? He asked. Quite well, I think. I haven't seen much of her. Haydock gave his loud barking laugh. Not as much as you'd like to, I bet. Good-looking girl, but damned rude. She sees too much of that German fellow. Damned unpatriotic, I call it. Dare say she's got no use for old fogies like you and me. But there are plenty of nice lads going about in our own services. Why take up with a bloody German? That sort of thing riles me, Mr. Meadows said. Be careful, he's just coming up the hill behind us. Don't care if he does here. Rather hope he does. I'd like to kick Master Carl's behind for him. Any decent German's fighting for his country, not slinking over here to get out of it. Well, said Tommy, it's one less German to invade England at all events. You mean he's here already? Rather good, Meadows. Not that I believe this Tommy rot about invasion. We never have been invaded and never will be. We've got an army, thank God. With what patriotic announcement the commander let in his clutch with a jerk, and the car leaped forward up the hill to Smuggler's Rest. And I'm going to stop right there. And we'll be at part 4. I guess. No, part 6. Thought. Now I'm getting dyslexic. Read VI as IV. Numerals. Have a good night or day, whatever time it is when you watch this, and be sweet. Don't be ugly. And don't be a thug like Granny either. Bye.